record, share screen. There we are. All right. Windows is somewhere around here. There it is. Come on, Windows. So I'm going through this right now, and I'm starting to take our workshop stuff from yesterday, our notes, and translating that into a program for Studio. So
Oh, cool.
yeah, there's a lot here actually to sort of sift through. All right. Other user, as if there's another user for my laptop or something. All right. All right, so I'm going to use the example I've been using from Camry. So that's the June 21st example. Wow, Windows is telling me it's 83 degrees again today. Wow, it sounds almost chilly. Rain coming. I like that. Anybody else get rain yesterday? Some sprinkles, some downpour, good drizzle.
Yeah, we got some. We got some up here.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, any wind or just rain? Hopefully,
just rain.
Just
yeah,
the rain.
there's some storms northeast of here that were producing hail and lots of wind gusts, I guess. At least according to the recording that popped up on NPR. Let's see, 7. It's this one. Yeah, duh. My brain isn't hasn't shifted out of third gear yet. You guys even know what that means? Like, do you guys usually like? Have you ever driven a manual transmission? Yeah, stick shift.
I love manual.
Oh, yeah. I do too. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I always both of my cars for a while were manuals, and I called it like the greatest anti-theft device because a lot of people can't do it anymore. Like, just don't know how to do it. So, anyway. Okay, so that's the make 2D output. I'm going to go ahead and just delete that away. All right. Now I'm going to be very careful, and let's take a look at how we can break things up into layers before we start extracting wire meshes and wireframes and all that stuff, right? So I think maybe it might be useful to back up to those steps and just really sort of be deliberate here, right? And I realize some of my demonstrations, it's like, oh, wait, I got to take a step backwards. I forgot this or forgot that, or I get to a certain point. It's like, there might be a way to sort of do that better. So, now knowing that in advance, let's be a little more deliberate here. So here's my model. This is actually Camry's model. She modeled the site. She did this. Okay, so we have the radiation map for June 21st. We have the suns and solar paths for June 21st. And I'm just going to, turn off this make 2D layer. Here, let me just set buildings to my current layer. Turn off this layer. Let's just take a look at each of these individually. So I have the annual radiation on. I should probably have the June 21 radiation on. There we go. That would be better. Yeah, that's the thing right there. All right. Let me just double check this. My guess is that somewhere around here I have that surface. Maybe I don't. So I just have the mesh now. Do I need the surface? I do need the surface. You know why I need the surface? Because we need to do an intersect. All right. So for whatever reason, originally we had this surface that we referenced into Grasshopper. And then that was the sort of area that we were measuring. And then we got this mesh that we baked back into Rhino, right? With all the color mapping on it. At some point in time, I accidentally deleted that surface. So I'm just going to draw that in. I'm going to put it on the planar surface layer where it should be, because that would help. This might not be a step that you have to do because, maybe you weren't stupid like me and deleted this, but let's see if I can, not sure why I can't Not letting me snap to. Okay, so does a mesh not really not have an endpoint? Not, maybe? Vertex, there we go. All right. I guess meshes have vertices, not endpoints. Yeah, that's cool. Guess that's a good thing to know. Okay, so you can see that here, right? I have a surface and a mesh. It looks like they're sandwiched together in this like a one thin pancake, paper thin pancake, onion skin thin pancake, and so you can see that they sort of overlap and get this sort of messy looking um, sort of clashing going on between the two geometries. All right, I can turn one of these off and on, right? Turn one of these off or on. Okay, so I'm just going to go through and double check that, right? I have my June 21 radiation, I have my planar surface, I have my buildings, I have my street blocks. There we are. Oh yeah, look at that. Okay, I have my suns and my rays. Happy little suns, nice little spheres. Something happened to my rays. I don't know what happened to them. Oh, I accidentally deleted those when I selected all curves. I also did that to the this is what a disaster. All right, here, let me undo some of the stuff I did. Here I'm talking about being deliberate, and then oh boy. Oh wow. Oh yeah, what a mess. All right, there we go. At this point, I think I accidentally deleted all my curves. All right. In an ideal world, before I upload this to YouTube, I would trim all that first part out, but I'm not going to do that. Oh,
That's what we
yeah.
go through too. So that's all right.
Yeah. All right. So here, sticking it to the man, right? Like Josh messed up. So, right. All right, cool. So let's try this again one more time. All right. I noticed that there's a sun path missing. I noticed that my surface is missing. So I'm going to go ahead and just really quickly, I'm going to make sure planar surface is set to the as the active layer. I'm going to go ahead and draw that surface again. Let's see. Vertex set, so here I can snap to that one. Snap to this one. The reason I'm doing this is because we're going to run an intersect command. In order to have Rhino draw the edge here for us, where the buildings touch that mesh, right? And so I'm going to do an intersect command in order to sort of generate the edges, the curve edges, or the edges as curves. Now I'm going to set the active layer to sun path. I'm going to draw one of these. This sphere is missing the sun path. I'm just going to go ahead and quickly try to. Here I'm going to turn on center and see if I can snap to the center of the sphere here. Yeah, that's the center of the sphere. Snap to end. There we are. I put that on sun path. Oops. So I'm going to go ahead and click that, go to the properties and say rays. All right. I'm going to turn the rays layer to orange. There we go. Now they'll all show up the same color. Let's see, what else? So I have my compass, I'm just going to turn these on and off one at a time and sort of understand what I have there. Make sure they're all on the right layers. They're all in different layers. There's my radiation map. There's the planar surface that I used to define the area for my planar surface. There's a topo layer, but that's just, no, we don't even need that. I'm just going to delete that away. I have my sun path and compass. Okay. I have my rays. Okay, I'm going to turn those off one by one. I have my suns, street blocks, buildings, and parks. Right, at this point, with all of the other like all the sun paths and stuff turned off, I'm going to see and make sure I don't have any extra curves lingering around. So I typed in the command cell curve, right? SEL-CRV, short for select curves, select all objects or all curved objects in the model that are showing up. Right now it says there's no objects at its selection, so I'm good. Just wanted to double check that. I'm going to go ahead and run that intersect command. And I'm going to create, before I do that, I'm going to create a new layer for these. And I'll call these, this layer, let's see, building intersections, something like that. And so I'm going to turn off the mesh and just look at what I want to deal with here. I'm going to turn off the street blocks as well. Just want to see the buildings in this surface. I'm just going to type in intersect. Select the objects intersect. I'm just going to select this surface as well as all the building masses on this buildings layer. So I'm just going to say select objects on the building objects layer and hit enter. Soon we'll have, oh yeah, okay. Yeah. So we'll have more curves than we really want here, right? We found all the intersections between all of these things that we selected here. So we have to, keeping that in mind, we might have generated more curves than we wanted, but that's okay. We can always go back through and edit some things. And if they're hidden, then they won't show up anyway when we do the make 2D. So, all right. So I'm just going to turn on what I want to see. I don't need this planar surface anymore. I'm going to turn that off. I am going to turn on the June 21st radiation. I have my building intersections, those intersection lines I just created. Sun's rays and sun path, get that sun path and the compass and the cardinal directions on there. Okay. So it looks like I have most of the stuff that I need, right? With the exception of this mesh, right? So the mesh will show up when I do the render as this sort of red, orange, yellow, blue squares, right? But no line work. And when I do the make 2D, all I'll do is get the outline of the mesh, but I won't get that sort of nice grid. And that nice grid, well, it's nice. So what I want to do is I want to extract that grid wireframe in the inside as separate lines and make sure that those are included with the make 2D operation. Okay, so in this case, did you say copy and paste it? How did you incorporate the solar patch to the full site? Yeah, let me incorporate the solar patch to the full site. Yeah, that was something we drew a surface and then we used Grasshopper and Ladybug. So you'll have to watch the videos and then just ask questions because they'll pop up, trust me. Okay, but we'll get to that in a minute. So let me see here. Let's see, one more, layer that we need to make. I'll call this mesh grid lines, right? The cell grid, the grid cells. And I'm going to make this a different layer that's going to stand out. Here, nice bright cyan or something. Okay, I'm going to make that the active layer. So when I do run the extract wireframe, maybe it'll put it on this for me already. I'm going to type that command in, extract. Extract. There's several different types of extract. And it helps when you spell it correctly instead of extract cat. Let's see. Extract, bad surfaces, curvature graphs, mesh faces, piped curves, render meshes, wireframe down at the bottom there. So you can type in extract wireframe. Boom. All right. It says, okay, select the surface or solid or mesh or sub D you want to do. I'm just going to zoom in here, make sure I select that mesh. Oh yeah, look at that. Isn't that great? Okay, so if I turn that mesh off, right, you'll see that I still have all of those grid lines. There's curves, as lines, and they're cyan. There's a unique color, which I think is important, right? Having them on a different layer won't make a difference because they'll all go on these visible curves layers and things like that. But as soon as they're a different color, then I can select everything in Illustrator later on and say, select everything that's this color. Select it all at once and just set the line weights. Boom, done. Okay, so that'll speed things up considerably, right? Hopefully, anyway. All right. Okay. So that's just trying to be a little more deliberate with my layer management, my labeling, and making sure I've extracted both intersection curves and edges where I need them, so I don't have like funny no-edged intersections in my make 2D. And the same thing with that grid. I want that grid, right? But we're going to tone it way down. We're going to set it to be really thin. But I still want to be able to see it. I still want those little crisp details of that grid, those grid cells. All right, so moving on now, let's talk about extracting both the make 2D drawing and the rendering. That was something else that popped up, I know. And so making sure that those two things sort of happen at the same time. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to look at my screen, make sure I'm going to keep this the exact same size. I'm not going to move viewports or anything else once I get this sort of set here. I'm going to go to my viewport label. I'm going to say, right now it's set to parallel, probably isometric. But I'm just going to go here and say isometric, in this case, southeast. Okay. By default, I think it'll zoom extents, but I'm just going to hit the zoom extents button and just sort of fit it to the screen, making sure that all the information I'm going to need is on here, right? So for instance, if I was doing this for the rendering and I turned, I didn't want, let's say, the compass on, right? And so I turned that off. And then I did this, it's going to change size, right? So I want to make sure that I have everything on for the make 2D, right? And then use that size, okay? And so I have this zoomed extents. That's another place where this could go wrong, right? The sizing could be off between the viewport rectangle and the subject on the inside, right? So I'm going to take a look at this just for a moment. I'm going to do the rendering really quickly. Okay, I'm just going to set this to rendered view, rendered mode. All right, and now I'm going to turn off some of these curves. I don't want to see a bunch of green or cyan curves, lines, grid lines. And I don't necessarily, I'm going to get these in the make 2D version, like actual vectors that can change their line weights, right? For the sun paths and this compass and things like that. So for the rendering, I'm just going to turn those off. Turn off the sun path. I'm going to turn off the rays. I'm going to turn off my mesh grid lines. Turn that off, right? My building intersections, any curves, I'm just going to turn off. Yeah, ugh, gross, right? It still looks like I might have a few stray curves somewhere. I do. Okay, I'll go ahead and delete those. I think I have all the curves that I really need already sort of turned on, right? No, I guess not. What is the reason for the mesh grid lines? I'll get to that. Hold on, let me just look at this really quickly. So one of the things I'm going to do here, wow. Oh, okay, I see. I made a building intersections layer, but apparently I didn't put anything on it. Like, are there any building intersections? Select objects. There are no objects out of the selection. Of course there aren't. All right, so I'm going to select all curves. Okay, so sorry, I just put those on the wrong layer. So I'm just going to put those on the building intersections layer. There we go. Oh yeah. Okay, that way I can turn them off. I meant to do that before, and for some reason I didn't. Okay, but I haven't moved my viewport at all, right? This can happen if you accidentally click on your screen, especially with that right mouse button. Or if you accidentally hit one of these buttons up here and change your view, I'm just going to keep it the way it is. When I'm pretty sure I have a rendering I can use. In this case, because this is just an axon diagram, it's not going to be really large. I'm just going to capture the viewport to file. So I'm going to say view, pull down, capture to file. It's going to ask me, okay, which viewport do you want to do? I have top, front, right, parallel. I'm just going to make sure that's set to parallel. I can say, well, keep the background transparent. The size, viewport, I can keep the scale and resolution at sort of same scale as I see on my screen. If I have a smaller, if I'm working on a smaller screen, let's say I'm just my regular laptop and things are too pixelated, I could always bump the scale up, right? Here. I'm gonna go ahead and hit okay. And it's gonna pop up and say, okay, you're trying to save an image file of your viewport. So I'm gonna tell it where, the desktop. I'm gonna tell it what file type to save it as. If I save a JPEG, it won't preserve that transparent background. PNG will. So we go ahead and hit save. And again, I'm being very, very careful to not drag my mouse and accidentally click anywhere on the screen and move the view around. Okay. And now I'm going to go ahead and start preparing for a Make 2D. Okay, in this case, I'm just going to go back to shaded view. I don't need to have a bunch of light and stuff like this. So again, Kate's question is, what's the mesh grid lines? The mesh grid lines are this grid in the mesh that won't show up when you just do a Make 2D on the mesh, right? It'll just give you the outline of the mesh. So I want that grid, so I literally extracted the wireframe mesh and put those lines on their own layer, and then made the layer a different color, so that when we see them show up, they'll actually be cyan. All right, planar surface, I don't need. Building intersections, I do need. Okay, it looks like I have everything here to do the Make 2D. I'll go ahead and do that again. I don't know who's, oh, my wife is texting me. All right. So again, this will just make a nice sort of flattened line drawing of our surface and mesh model here, right? All right, so I'm going to hit OK. It's going to pop up. I want to make sure I have the right viewport selected. So, you know, parallel. Yep, not top, not front, not right. You do any of those views if you wanted to. And tangents on, hidden, no, scene silhouette on, viewport rectangle on, the rest of this, no. Go ahead and click OK. And again, you're going to see a flattened axon drawing then show up on the XY plane. In the bottom left corner of it's going to show up that 0, 0, 0 point over here where my cursor is. It's going to move out this way in the positive X, positive Y quadrant, my Cartesian coordinate space here in Rhino. Just taking a minute or so. And it's not showing up, and that's because I have all my Make 2D layers turned off already. If I turn them on, there they are. Okay. Now you can see, because I had my model close to the XY point, and it puts these drawing by the XY point, these things are now overlapping. That's problematic if I want to select and export just the axon drawing out, right? So all of the stuff it created with that Make 2D command are in these sub layers underneath this Make 2D layer. So if I right click on that Make 2D layer and say select all sub layer objects, it'll select that entire drawing, all of the stuff on it. I can just sort of slowly, carefully move it all out like this. I'm not sure why I got extra stuff here. What in the world is that? That's weird. Oh, how's about this? I'll just turn everything off except for my drawing. Take that, Rhino. Sorry. Well, what am I getting a bunch of stray stuff here if it's on a different layer? What is this? This on a Make 2D layer? No, weird. Okay, you know, all that talk about being deliberate.
That happened last time too.
Yeah. All right, let me just back up and undo doing that Make 2D. I suspect I had some stray things on a Make 2D layer. I didn't realize it because I had it turned off. So let's undo everything to the Make 2D here. Change visibility. Undoing the Make 2D. Okay. Let me just take a look. I have something in the Make 2D layers that I need to just get rid of, apparently. I don't know why there was anything in those. Oh, you know what? I'll just delete those layers away. That would make more sense. I'll just regenerate them. Select We'll just delete this layer and everything on it. Yes. Yes. All right. There. I didn't like that layer anyway. I don't need any of these, so I'll go ahead and delete these away. There. That's a cleaner model now. All right. Once more, I have everything that I need turned on. All right. I have it back to where it was before. And now let's go ahead and do the make 2D. So I'm gonna go ahead and select this. All right. 8th time's a charm. You know what they say. All right, here we go. The sun rays, all of the solar radiation and stuff, all that stuff is baked in from Grasshopper. It's in the videos. I can't go over that right now, maybe here in a bit, but I wanted to go through this process of how to generate the axons. All right. All righty. Just move this away while it's still all selected. That's much cleaner. Oh, that's so much better. Okay.
Why do your mesh grids squares look smaller than my mesh? I mean, bigger than my grid squares.
Different grid size, maybe. Was this 5 by 5 or 10 by 10, maybe? I think this was 10 by 10.
10 by 10, yeah.
Yeah, 10 by 10. Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and, well, first I'm gonna save the file. Just added 12,000 and a half curves to it. So go ahead and select this, say export selected. All right. Here's where I'm going to make a native Illustrator file, just those vectors. That's just this drawing. June solar diagram example. I'll call this June solar diagram example 2. Aha. Hit OK. The mesh is generated from Grasshopper with your Ladybug tools based off of the grid size that you give it in the solar radiation, direct radiation file. So that's what sets the density of the mesh that gets baked back into Rhino. So if you want to make those mesh squares bigger, you got to change the grid size all the way back in the direct radiation part. Okay. All right, so here's the example we did yesterday, right? But without changing all of this grid to the right size here. So let's take care of that. So let me open up the new file that we just made, open. All right. First things first, in Illustrator, I can change this artboard size. Width 17, height 11. So like an 11 by 17 landscape orientation. Again, just in case anybody is having an issue with this, I'll just go ahead and show this width and height. I think I said last time I made the width of this 17 inches. I making sure that the width and height are linked so that if I change one, then everything sort of scales proportionally and you don't get something sort of oddly stretched. And of course, I could also, center up the selection here. So I could put that on 8.5. The midway point along 17 inches, right? 5.5 over here in Y. Whatever reason, it gave me both cyan and black line work here. I'm not sure what's going on there, but figure that out in a moment, I guess. Maybe the mesh does actually. See how your viewport rectangle is small, mine's always large, always huge. Yeah, so what I did is I just said snapshot of current view. So here, let's go back to those settings when I exported it out. Export selected, because these settings will matter, right? Chunky, save, right? So I put for scale snapshot of current view. If I say 8 scale, it's going to be ridiculously large, right? So if every inch in your drawing is 8 feet, then you can imagine actually it's going to be quite a large drawing, because this is a lot of area, right? So I'm just doing snapshot of current view so that it sort of, isn't so large. It isn't like, hundreds of inches wide by hundreds of inches tall. Okay. So that's another issue that, like, for instance, if you get onto this document, then you don't see anything, and then you zoom out and you start to see like a, this happens, right? You start to see like a portion of your drawing, like a corner of it over here, but it goes all off the edit board, the canvas here. Then you need to resize it, try to drag it back on, right? If you can, and if not, then maybe you can sort of get it closer to that XY 000 point in Rhino, and again adjust the size, the scale of it, or just say snapshot of current view, and it'll give you something much more manageable. So this is 11 by 17 document.
I think that's where it messed up, because for the models, we actually did the scaled view and we want, or right. And we had the.
Yeah, we actually selected 8 scale, right?
Yeah, I think that's where I messed up.
Could be, that might be the case. And, the problem that Kate just mentioned, right? Like how it's always really like ridiculously large, right? If you export this larger an area out at 8 scale, it's going to be ridiculously large. You would need a large format plotter to print this thing out. It'd be like a billboard or something. I don't know, but maybe I'm, overreacting. Anyway, let's take a look at what we have here. So viewport rectangle. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and add another layer. Call this rendered underlay. And I'll go ahead and place this view capture thing we made. There we are. Okay, great. I'm gonna go ahead and change that width to 17 inches as well. And just very precisely line this thing up. So 8.5 and 5.5. And if all went according to plan, then those things line up with a precision of several decimal points of accuracy, right? We can only hope. All right, so at this point, I have a bunch of stuff here, and I need to just sort of like, change a bunch of line weights, right? I'm going to take all these visible tangents, and I'm just going to turn them to like 0.25. Same thing for visible curves. Turn those to 0.25 maybe. Turn those way down. Oh yeah, look at that. Same thing with the scene silhouettes. Select those. If you turn those to 0.5, see if there's any noticeable major difference. I don't think there is, probably, but okay, I'm going to go ahead and look at cyan here. Let's see if we can select all objects, all the same objects with all the same stroke color. Yeah, there we go. That's most of them. All right, that's most of the grid there. And I'm going to turn these to, what do we use? Like 0.1 or something, right? We turn those way down. The same thing here. For some reason, I have some black ones, but it looks like everything else is like gold and blue and cyan. So I'm just going to go ahead and select everything with same black stroke color here, same stroke color here. Let's see what it zoom out. Oh, and it gives me the sun pads and everything else. Why did this turn black? That's really odd. I wonder if it's just because of the mesh. Interesting. Well, Again, I'm just going to go ahead and turn these to 0.1. I can always go back through and just actually much easier just sort of to select these and turn these back to like 0.5 or something. 0.25 maybe. Yeah, I don't know why. I mean, like I do things and it's always about getting the layers so organized, and I just didn't bring it today with the organization here. Attention to detail just isn't my forte this week. Let's see here. So I'm just going to go through here and make sure that I set all of these others back to, let's say, 0.25 stroke weight, line weight. There we are. Just trying to be methodical. Again, sometimes it just feels like no matter what you do, no matter what you plan for, you have to go back and give the drawing a little bit of TLC here. Make sure everything's just perfect. All right. Almost there. Point 0.25. Get a little bit north arrow. 0.25. I gotta zoom in. Select this in, some of this stuff. 0.25. What this is. I'm getting rid of it. Oh, it's probably the tick for the compass, but it sort of looks odd to me, so I just got rid of it. Back over here, some sun path needs to change back to 0.25. Part of the 0, change to 0.25. Oh, really? There we go. 0.25. Like, how many different line segments could this possibly be broken up into? He asked, knowing that the answer was not satisfactory. All right, so let's see here. Do this the old-fashioned way here. That one, that one. Almost. Okay, sorry. It's a ridiculous amount. I mean, no one's going to see that when you zoom out. Okay. Yeah. 0.25, got it. All right, so now at this point, then we can start to change line colors. So I'm going to take all these visible curves, select them all together, and let's make sure that I have not the fill, but the stroke in the foreground here on the left-hand side, this toolbar. Then go ahead and make sure all the lines are set to black. There we are. It's a little cleaner now. Let's say the rendered underlay is a little overbearing. Maybe I could just select that, turn the opacity down a bit, make some of the line work pop a little more, potentially. That's one way of doing it. Maybe that's a little too much, actually. I'll reselect that, turn that back up a bit. Just take the edge off of it just a little bit there. There we are. Yeah. We also talked about, changing, let's say, the rays, or beefing those up a little bit, or changing the color of the sun. Again, there's information on here that kind of gets lost if it's all black and gray, right? And so, that's where selective use and splashing some color on here could actually be kind of useful. Yesterday I did this where I changed both the line weight and the line color, right? So in this case, I picked more of a sort of yellow, with a little bit of orange to it. Sort of old Tampa Bay Buccaneer colors or something. I could do that with the sun as well. I could select these suns. If I want to change their stroke color to the exact same thing as these lines that I just did, I can select these suns, use the eyedropper tool, It's going to say, okay, what properties do you want to use for these suns? I can select that, one of these rays, and now suddenly it's set the stroke color the same as the ray stroke color, right? And then last, if I wanted to bling this up a bit, again, I was using the gradients. I can take each of these shapes, right? I'll just take one at a time. I'll just do this once. And I'm just going to go to the gradient box over here and say, oops. Now look what happened, right? I had the stroke still set instead of the fill. So I need to undo that. Make sure that I'm trying to modify the fill of this shape and go to the gradient tool, pick a radial gradient. It's going from white to black with all the grays in between the continuum. I'm going to go ahead and select a different color here. If you only see grayscale, I can go up to those box and pick RGB or CMYK. Now I can start to adjust some sliders here and there, right? So now I can get the full range here. Give it a little bit of gusto there. And then when I want to tweak the gradient, well, let me be clear here. I can go ahead and select these suns as well. Yeah, there we go. Use the eyedropper tool, and there, now they're all the same, right? Maybe that's perfect. Three-dimensionally, maybe this sort of, this white specular gradient maybe actually changes its position. If that's the case, if you're that anal like I am, you can select the shape with the gradient on the inside and then go to this gradient tool over here. And it'll give you this sort of slider where you can position both the center of the gradient, the outer edge of the gradient, and then the continuum in between to sort of talk about how gradual or not you go from that white to orange, right? So in this case, I can make it more or less gradual. I can change the direction. Give it a little more white here, and I can do that for each one of these if I want to go through each one. Sometimes it's the little things that really make a difference. Other times, always look at how much time you're spending and then the result. And if the two are congruent, then great. But if not, then maybe you find a better way to spend your time. Help me with the mesh. When exported to Illustrator, I don't see the mesh. Okay. All right, so there we go. Maybe I would beef up this sun path here. It looks a little small. I kind of like having the compass sort of toned down a bit, but maybe this path could be beefed up a little more. Could do a little better job there, I think. Hold down the shift key so I can select each of these at the same time. There we are. Change the line weight to like maybe 0.75, beef it up just a bit there. Nope, missed that apparently. 0.75. Yeah. Oh, missed this one. That would help. Oh, always about, again, just making sure that you're covering the whole drawing, especially if you zoom in on something, right? Always try to make sure you're zooming back out, and double checking, making sure you're getting everything in your drawing that you need. You could shorten these up if you wanted to, add arrowheads like I did, or just leave them sort of going to the center of the model. That's up to you. One thing I would probably do here if I did do length is, I wonder if there's a way to sort of understand what the length is. Probably not. I was going to say, try to set them all to be like the same length so that there's a consistency there. But that's something you could always do. Again, just to sort of quickly sort of show, where these, what direction the sort of rays are going, right? Something like that. And then again, we talked also about maybe mapping some more things on here, right? So that's what I really wanted to sort of talk about today. We can always go over more of this on Monday. But this idea that, there's other sort of contextual information around here that you might want and need to use. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. There's a few little indiscrepancies, and there might be a couple things I might get rid of here, some stray lines that I don't quite need, or, like we talked about yesterday, but overall this seemed to work decently well. Right, have a few little mix-ups there. I would fix back in the Rhino model, try to cap the tops of these or fill them in somehow, right? Don't need that. But again, just sort of going through now, maybe with a sort of with a little more attention to detail, right? Sometimes can help. So get rid of some of this unnecessary redundant line work. There's a couple of spots there that could be cleaned up. You always can zoom back out and say, will it show up? No, it won't. So it's not a good use of my time, right? But you can sort of go back and forth between the sort of micro and the macro. I'm gonna go ahead and save this for right now. But that's the program or that's the workflow and the gist of it anyway. And my goodness, here I did so many things to try to work everything out so I wouldn't end up having to redo things, and yet there I was. I still had to redo things. So can we briefly talk about some of the other stuff I'd like to see sort of mapped on here? And then we can do individual, it'll be work time, and I can do individual consultations with folks who need individual help. Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
All right, so let's talk about that. Let's think about the sort of list that we made before. If I open up Canvas, maybe. Let's see. We've made a sort of list of stuff to look at when we were evaluating potential sites, right? And so I'd like to see some of that information, make it onto these diagrams where it's actually, oh wait, let's see, let me type in the right password here. It definitely knows when you type in the wrong password. Let's see here. Was that in Studio? Might have been Downtown Workshop. Yeah, right. So these things to look for, right? Let me go ahead and copy and paste these into 767 for this one. Okay, I'll make a new page here. I'll call this diagrams. I'll call this final diagrams, maybe. Okay, give you a little more description here. All right. So your goal is to complete the 4 solar diagrams, except March 21st, December 21st, June 21st, annual, as well as to take a sort of a blank site axon and map some of the following systems and observations that you found, right? And so then we can resort back to some of the stuff that, this isn't a comprehensive list. You might have stuff that's not on this list. You might not have everything that's in this list, right? But I'm kind of curious to sort of understand, right? Like you guys analyze particular sites, their strengths and weaknesses, pros and cons, given with a list like this, right? So, we've taken care of this, access to daylight, right? But we didn't talk about sound or noise or other sort of landmarks or public transportation stops and things like that that are around. And we talked about that just very briefly at the end of last class. You know, I found like one of those map pins, and, you know, you could sort of pop, you know, there's ways to maybe think about that. Let me just go here, right? So when I did this, all I did is I took this diagram, I just blew it up bigger and I cropped it. Yeah, I made a clipping mask, right? And then, you know, then I can start to like talk about maybe more granular details, because I'm really sort of zoomed in on the site and just the immediate area around it, right? I could say something like, you know, streets have no daylight. That's a bad thing, blah, blah, blah. Or sorry, the streets have an abundance of daylight, no shade. There's nothing blocking the west sun, which is the hottest time of the day, and some of the brightest sun you can get, and it's harder to control because it's usually lower in the sky, right? So I need to sort of think about that. There's some space here between my building footprint and the footprint of the adjacent building with the pawn shop. You know, the task there is to make some sort of outdoor civic space, but then, you know, do I need to make sure the cars can't get into it? Do I need to make sure that I provide shade? Do I need to make sure that there's a buffer between Las Vegas Boulevard and this outdoor space, or needs to connect really closely to something across the street? Or, you know, that's for you to start to make some observations based on your analysis, right? And really sort of turning the corner and saying, here are some of the sort of opportunities and some of the challenges, right, based off of this analysis. You could even do, like I said before, placing, let's see, these silly, you know, again, not that I'm obsessed with these, but, you know, everybody knows what these are, right, when they see these, right? Like, because of, you know, Google Maps and Apple Maps and all those other things, right? So, you know, you could always find versions of this to plop in. You know, if this is just a JPEG with a white background. The one thing I did here is, if I want to convert this into a vector, right, I can select it. And then up here, there's an image trace button. I can select, there's some settings for the image trace. I can say just black and white logo or silhouette to make it very simple, right? It'll show me what the result looks like, and then I can just hit expand. Okay. Now this is a vector graphic that I can change around. You know, I could change its fill color, for instance. Oh, right. And, you know, use something for public transportation versus a different color for hospitality and entertainment and dining versus, you know, so you could begin to sort of map some things here, right? You could do something like this, or like I drew just a quick little sort of leader here, right? It's called a leader. I can select it, which apparently I can't. So again, there's ways you can sort of think about how to sort of annotate a diagram with some of this information on it. Okay, let me go ahead and hit save. And so look, I might have an 11 by 17 for June 21st. I might have 11 by 17 for December 21st, an 11 by 17 for September 21st, and an 11 by 17 for the annual solar radiation and sun paths. And then I might have a separate 11 by 17 with either this without maybe the mesh and sun diagram or sun path, or maybe blown up version, right, where I start to map other information on as a sort of diagram. Okay, does that make sense? So $4. So let me just re-edit this so it makes sense if you want to reread this. Goals to complete the 4 solar diagrams as well. Take a blank site axon and map some of the following systems and observations that you found on a 5th diagram, sort of axon diagram. Okay. All right. Are there any questions about that before I stop sharing and I let other people share and we just sort of troubleshoot some things individually? So that's the goal for Tuesday. Okay. I will actually, I guess what I can do right now, final diagrams. and just make a new assignment. So you can upload them. That would help. Final site analysis diagrams. That way you have a place to submit them. Oh, help if I edit it first. Yeah. Submit your 5 analysis diagrams for solar plus 1 mapping. Please use PDF format, right? So it might be a 5-page, one PDF that's 5 pages, or it might be 5 separate PDF files. I don't necessarily care. I'll go ahead and just give it 100 points, just so I can keep track. There's 5. So if you only submit 4, there'll be 80 points here. Just a way for me to keep track of what's been submitted. Due this coming Tuesday. Available from, I don't know, today all the way till Wednesday, just in case we need it, or you're asked to tweak a few quick things and resubmit. Go ahead and hit save. All right. Let's go back to modules, right? So there's the explanation. Here's the final site diagrams where you can actually submit them. Okay. I'll do something similar in Studio where you can submit the precedent study diagrams. Just go ahead and save these and close these down. And yeah. Boy, that was kind of a disaster. Let me stop sharing. Oh, and stop recording. That would help.